I counted the footsteps overhead. 7 from the bedroom to the bathroom. Pause. Water running. 8 back to the bedroom. Then silence. I sat in the wingback chair by the window, the one my late husband Thomas had reupholstered for our 30th anniversary, and waited. My coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but I hadn't moved to warm it. I was listening, counting, waiting for the moment I knew was coming. The stairs creaked. 5 steps down, then Brian's voice carried through the house, sharp and certain. "Margaret, we need to talk about the furniture situation." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took a slow breath and watched the aspen trees outside shimmer in the morning light. This cabin, in Evergreen, Colorado, had been mine and Thomas's dream retirement project. We'd spent 3 years designing it, choosing every beam, every stone for the fireplace, every window placement to capture the mountain views. Thomas died 2 months before we could move in permanently. That was 5 years ago. "Margaret?" Brian appeared in the doorway, my son-in-law of 15 years, holding a measuring tape. "Did you hear me?" "I heard you," I said. "What furniture situation?" He gestured vaguely toward the living room. "Rachel and I have been talking. This layout doesn't really work for us. We're thinking of moving some pieces to the garage, temporarily, of course." "The chair." He meant Thomas's chair. I'd watched him measuring around it yesterday, pretending not to notice when I walked past. "This is temporary," I reminded him, keeping my voice level. "You and Rachel are only staying until your house renovation is finished. What is it now? Another 6 weeks?" "About that." Brian shifted his weight. The contractor hit some issues with the foundation. Might be looking at 3 more months, maybe 4. 3 months had already passed since Rachel called me in tears, saying their 100-year-old Victorian was unlivable with the walls torn open and exposed wiring everywhere. "Come stay at the cabin, Mom," she'd begged. "Please, we have nowhere else to go." I'd said yes, immediately. I always said yes to Rachel. She was my only child, my late-in-life miracle baby. Thomas and I had tried for years before she came along when I was 38. I would have given her anything. But I hadn't expected Brian to start treating my home like it was his. 4 months, I repeated. That's quite a bit longer than the 6 weeks you originally mentioned. "These things happen with old houses," Brian snapped, the measuring tape closed. "Anyway, about this furniture, it's just taking up space neither of us use. You're usually in the kitchen or your bedroom, and we need the living room for what? For living in." He said it like I was being deliberately obtuse. "Rachel and I spend our evenings there. We're trying to make it feel more like home." "It is a home," I said quietly. "My home." Something flickered across Brian's face, too quick for me to read. Right, of course. That's not what I meant, but it was exactly what he meant. I'd heard the way he and Rachel talked when they thought I couldn't hear. "Once we get her settled into that rhythm," Brian had said last week, his voice carrying up from the basement where they'd set up a home office, "she'll understand this works better for everyone." I didn't ask what rhythm. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. That afternoon, I walked through my own home like a visitor. The dining table where Thomas and I had planned our retirement over hand-drawn sketches now held Brian's laptop and scattered papers. The bookshelf, I'd carefully curated first editions of Steinbeck, a complete collection of Mary Oliver's poetry. My grandmother's leather-bound Jane Austen had been reorganized. The books I loved were shoved to the top shelf, while Brian's business management texts took prime real estate at eye level. In the kitchen, Rachel was making tea. My daughter looked tired, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, the same way she'd worn it as a teenager coming home from field hockey practice. "Hey, Mom." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Want some?" "No, thank you. Rachel, I wanted to ask you something." "Sure." She poured hot water over a tea bag, not looking at me. "How much longer do you think the renovation will really take?" Rachel's hand stilled. "Brian told you about the foundation?" "He mentioned it might be 3 or 4 more months. These old houses." Rachel shook her head. Every time they open up a wall, they find something new. The electrician said the whole second floor needs rewiring, and the plumber found cast iron pipes that should have been replaced decades ago. Rachel, look at me. She turned, and I saw it then, the exhaustion that went deeper than renovation stress. My daughter was 42 years old, and somewhere along the way, I'd stopped really seeing her. When had the confident girl who'd backpacked through Europe after college become this woman who couldn't quite meet my eyes? Are you happy? I asked. What? Mom, of course. I'm just stressed about the house with Brian. Rachel went very still. Why would you ask that? Because you used to tell me everything. Now you tell me what he wants me to hear. That's not fair. But she didn't deny it. Brian's footsteps sounded on the stairs. Rachel's expression shuddered like a window slamming closed. The tea's ready, she said, too brightly. I think I'll take mine upstairs. She left me standing in my own kitchen, holding a cold cup of coffee and wondering when I'd lost my daughter to a man who measured furniture like he was planning a hostile takeover. The weeks that followed had their own rhythm. Just like Brian had said, he woke at 5:45 every morning, his alarm blaring through the walls I'd carefully insulated to keep sound from traveling between rooms. By the time I made it downstairs at 7, he'd already claimed the kitchen, his protein powder and blender and various supplements spread across the counter. My coffee maker was pushed to the corner. Morning, Margaret, he'd say, not looking up from his phone. Hope I didn't wake you. He knew he had. The walls weren't that thick. Rachel started sleeping later, staying in their bedroom until 9 or 10. When she finally emerged, Brian would already be in his basement office, on conference calls that lasted until lunch. My daughter ate alone, staring at her laptop, responding to work emails for the nonprofit where she managed fundraising campaigns. We'd exchange maybe a dozen words before she disappeared again. I'd raised Rachel to be independent, to speak her mind, to never settle for less than she deserved. Watching her tiptoe around her own husband's schedule felt like watching a ghost of the girl I knew. One morning, I came downstairs to find Thomas's chair missing. I stood in the living room, staring at the empty space by the window where it had been for 5 years. The indentation in the carpet was still there, a perfect outline of the chair's feet. Where is it? I asked when Brian emerged from the kitchen with his protein shake. Where's what? You know exactly what. He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. It's in the garage. Like I mentioned, we needed the space. Rachel wanted to set up her yoga area by the window, better light for her morning practice. Rachel wanted that? She did. But he wouldn't meet my eyes when he said it. I found the chair in the garage, pushed behind boxes of Christmas decorations and old paint cans. The upholstery Thomas had chosen a deep blue wool that reminded him of the ocean, where we'd honeymooned in Maine, was already dusty. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in the smell of concrete and motor oil, and felt something inside me shift. This wasn't about a chair. It had never been about furniture or space or renovation timelines. This was about Brian systematically erasing my presence in my own home. That evening, I asked Rachel to take a walk with me. Just the two of us, I said. Mother-daughter time. She agreed, but I noticed her glance toward the basement where Brian was working, as if asking permission. We walked the trail behind the cabin, the same path Thomas and I used to take every evening before dinner. The aspen leaves were turning gold, and the air had that crisp edge that meant fall was settling into the mountains. Mom. About the chair, Rachel started. I don't want to talk about the chair. Then what? I want to talk about you. I stopped walking and turned to face her. When did you stop telling him no? Rachel's face went pale. What? Brian. When did you stop saying no to him? I say no to him all the time. Do you? I waited. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been saying yes, Brian, and whatever you think. Brian, and you're right. Brian, for so long you've forgotten you have your own voice. That's not fair. You don't understand our marriage. Then explain it to me. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. It's complicated. Complicated how? He needs things to be a certain way. If I argue with him about small stuff, Then he gets stressed. And when he's stressed, he shuts down. It's easier to just let him have his way on the little things so we can actually communicate about the big things. And does that work? The communication? Rachel looked away. Sometimes, baby. I reached for her hand. That's not a partnership. That's surrender. You don't get it. Brian's under a lot of pressure at work. His boss is micromanaging everything, and he's up for a promotion, and I'm trying to be supportive. By disappearing? I'm not disappearing. You're in your bedroom until noon. You used to be up at dawn, doing yoga by the window, which, by the way, you never asked me about. That was Brian's story. Rachel pulled her hand away. Why are you attacking him? I'm not attacking anyone. I'm worried about you. Well, don't be. I'm fine. But she wasn't fine, and we both knew it. We walked back to the cabin in silence, and Rachel went straight to the bedroom. I heard their voices through the walls. Rachel's defensive, Brian's calm and reasonable. The kind of calm that comes from knowing you've already won. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Patricia Anderson had handled Thomas's estate when he died. She was sharp, thorough, and had no patience for nonsense. Margaret, she answered on the second ring. How are the mountains treating you? I need to know my options. That sounds ominous. What's going on? I told her everything. The extended stay that kept extending, the furniture, the way Brian had begun referring to decisions about my house as we decided when I decided nothing. The chair in the garage. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then, who's on the deed? Just me. Thomas left everything to me. And did you sign anything when Rachel and Brian moved in? Any kind of rental agreement or residency document? No. It was just supposed to be temporary. Their family. Family with no legal claim to your property. Patricia's tone shifted to business mode. You have every right to ask them to leave. The question is, do you want to? Did I? My daughter was up there right now, probably still asleep, probably exhausted from another evening of walking on eggshells around her husband's ego. If I forced them out, would I lose Rachel entirely? What if I just want them to remember it's my house? I asked. Then remind them. You're the homeowner, Margaret. Start acting like it. I started small. The next morning, I moved Thomas's chair back to its spot by the window before Brian came downstairs. When he noticed, he opened his mouth to say something, then apparently thought better of it. I met his eyes and waited. He looked away first. I reclaimed the kitchen counter, pushing his supplements back to one small corner and setting up my coffee station exactly where I wanted it. I reorganized the bookshelf, putting my books at eye level where they belonged. I even, and this felt simultaneously petty and powerful, turned off the heat in the basement office during Brian's conference calls. Margaret, did you turn down the thermostat? He called up the stairs one afternoon. Yes. Heating that space when only one person is using it seemed wasteful. I heard him mutter something under his breath, but he didn't push it. Rachel noticed the changes, but said nothing. She watched me move through the house like I owned it, which I did with an expression I couldn't quite read. One evening, I found her sitting in Thomas's chair, staring out at the mountains. He loved this spot, I said, coming to stand beside her. I remember. Rachel's voice was soft. I used to sit in his lap here when I was little. He'd point out the different trees and make up stories about the animals living in them. The rabbit kingdom in the pine grove, and the bear who ran the general store. Rachel smiled at the memory. Then her smile faded. Brian didn't mean anything by moving it, you know. He just wanted Rachel. I sat down on the arm of the chair, stopped defending him for a second and listened to me. Your father and I didn't raise you to make yourself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. You don't understand what it's like. Brian's been through. I don't care what Brian's been through. The words came out sharper than I intended. I care about what you're going through. I watch you fade a little more every day, and it's breaking my heart. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to do it differently. Start by remembering who you are. The woman I raised didn't need anyone's permission to take up space. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, maybe recognition, maybe grief for the person she used to be. Then Brian called her name from upstairs, and the moment shattered. "I should go," Rachel said, standing up quickly. "He needs help with something." I watched her leave and made a decision. The next day, while Brian was out grocery shopping and Rachel was on a video call for work, I drove into town to Patricia's office. She had papers drawn up by the time I arrived, official, legal, bound with blue backing sheets that made everything real. "Notice to vacate," Patricia said, sliding them across her desk. 30 days from the date of service. You're well within your rights as the property owner. What if Rachel never forgives me? What if she does? Patricia leaned back in her chair. "Margaret, I've known you for 15 years. You're not doing this to be cruel. You're doing it because you've watched someone slowly take over your home and your daughter, and you're putting your foot down. That's not wrong. That's self-preservation." I looked down at the papers. My name at the top, the cabin's address, the date by which Brian and Rachel needed to be out. 30 days felt simultaneously too long and not enough time. "You don't have to serve these today," Patricia said gently. "Take them home. Think about it. But Margaret, don't think for too long. Men like Brian don't stop pushing until someone pushes back." I took the papers home and hid them in my bedroom, in the drawer of my nightstand where I kept Thomas's watch and our wedding rings. That night at dinner, Brian announced they'd invited some friends over for a barbecue next weekend. "It'll be fun," he said, not asking. "A chance to use that new grill I bought." "You bought a grill?" This was the first I'd heard of it. "For the deck. It's being delivered tomorrow." He said it like I should be grateful. "Don't worry about food, we'll handle everything." "This is my house," I said quietly. "Sorry?" Brian looked up from his phone. "This is my house. I appreciate that you're staying here, but it's still my house. You can't just buy a grill for my deck and invite people over without asking me." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Brian set down his phone very carefully. "I thought we were family. I didn't realize I needed to ask permission for everything." "You don't need permission. You need respect." "There's a difference." Rachel was staring at her plate, frozen. "Respect," Brian repeated. "Like the respect you've been showing us, passive-aggressively moving things around and turning off the heat while I'm trying to work?" Brian, Rachel started. "No, Rachel. Your mother clearly has something she wants to say." He turned back to me, his eyes cold. "So say it, Margaret. What's really bothering you? You moved into my home temporarily and started acting like you owned it. You've made decisions without consulting me, moved my furniture, rearranged my things, and treated me like an inconvenience in my own space. That's what's bothering me." "We've been trying to make this work." Brian's voice rose. "The renovation has been a nightmare. We've had nowhere else to go, and instead of being grateful that we're family helping family, you're keeping score like we're freeloaders." "I never said you were freeloaders. You're thinking it." He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You know what? Maybe it's time Rachel and I looked for somewhere else to stay. Clearly, we're not welcome here." "Brian, please." Rachel looked between us, panicked. "No, it's fine." Brian's jaw was tight. "We'll figure something out. We'll rent an apartment, whatever it takes to get out from under your mother's roof, where apparently we're such a burden." He left the kitchen, and a moment later, I heard the basement door close. Rachel sat very still, not looking at me. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For causing problems." "Rachel, you didn't cause anything. He's going to be upset all night now, maybe for days, and the renovation's not done. And we can't afford to rent anywhere decent. And, is this what you do?" I asked softly. "Apologize for his reactions? Take responsibility for his feelings?" Rachel finally looked at me, and I saw something break open in her expression. Exhaustion, grief, recognition all at once. "I don't know how to do anything else anymore." "Then maybe it's time you learned." I went to my bedroom and took out the papers from my nightstand. My hands shook slightly as I walked back to the kitchen, where Rachel still sat, staring at nothing. "I want you to read something," I said, placing the notice to vacate in front of her. Rachel's eyes widened as she scanned the document. "Mom, what is this?" "It's me, standing up for myself. And I think it's time you did the same. You're kicking us out? I'm giving you 30 days. And in those 30 days, I want you to think very carefully about the life you're living and whether it's the life you want. I can't believe you would do this." Rachel stood up, the paper crumpled in her hand. After I asked you for help, you're throwing us out?" "I gave you help. I'm still giving you help. But help doesn't mean letting someone else take over my life. Brian needs to understand that this is my home, not his. And you need to remember that you deserve a partner who treats you like an equal, not like an assistant who exists to smooth his path." Rachel's face was red, her eyes bright with tears. "You don't know anything about my marriage. I know you're not happy. I know you've made yourself smaller and smaller trying to fit into the shape he wants. And I know your father would have said something months ago if he were here. Don't bring Dad into this. He left me this cabin because he knew I'd need a place that was completely mine after he was gone. Somewhere I could grieve and heal and find myself again. I'm not letting anyone, not even you, take that away from me. And I don't think you should let anyone take your sense of self away from you either." Rachel stood there, shaking, holding the notice like it might bite her. Then she dropped it on the table and walked out. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard the bedroom door close, heard voices, hers high and upset, his low and controlled. I sat down at my kitchen table in my house with my coffee and my favorite mug, and I waited. The shouting started around 10 p.m. Not loud enough to make out words, but loud enough to rattle the pictures on the walls. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to my daughter and her husband argue about me, about the house, about what came next. The worst part was how familiar the rhythm sounded. Rachel's voice rising in distress, Brian's going calm and reasonable until hers dropped to defeated silence. This was what happened every time, I realized. Brian stayed reasonable until Rachel exhausted herself. Then he'd generously forgive her for being emotional, and they'd move forward on his terms. Not this time. In the morning, I served the papers officially hand-delivered as Patricia had instructed, with Rachel and Brian both present as witnesses. Brian read through them slowly, his expression shifting from angry to calculating to coldly neutral. 30 days, he said. You're actually doing this. I am. Fine. He set the papers down. We'll be out in 2 weeks. I'm not staying somewhere. I'm not wanted. Brian, Rachel's voice was small. We'll figure it out, he said to her, that same calm, reasonable tone. Your mother has made her choice. We'll make ours. They started packing that afternoon. I heard them moving around upstairs, opening and closing drawers, carrying boxes down to their car. Rachel avoided me completely, coming and going through the garage so we wouldn't have to look at each other. Brian was coldly polite on the few occasions we crossed paths, his face a mask of controlled civility that somehow felt more hostile than anger. On the third day, Rachel's best friend Emma called me. Margaret? It's Emma Chen. Rachel's friend from college? I'm calling because Rachel asked me not to, which means she needs me to. Is she okay? No. She's at my apartment. She showed up 2 nights ago with 3 suitcases and told me she needed somewhere to stay. Emma paused. Without Brian, something in my chest loosened. She left him? Not officially. She said she needed space to think, but she's been crying for 2 days straight. And when she's not crying, she's staring at the wall like she's trying to figure out how she got here. I think, Margaret, your eviction notice was the first time in years someone told her she mattered enough to fight for. My eyes burned. I didn't mean to hurt her. You didn't. You woke her up. Now she has to decide what to do with that. Emma's voice softened. She asked me not to call you because she thinks you hate her. I told her that was ridiculous. But maybe you could tell her yourself? I drove to Denver that afternoon. Emma's apartment was in Capitol Hill, a renovated brownstone with tall windows and original hardwood floors. Rachel answered the door wearing sweatpants and one of Thomas's old Colorado State t-shirts that she must have taken from my closet years ago. "Mom," her voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" Emma called me. "Can I come in?" Rachel hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was cozy, filled with plants and books and framed photos of Emma's travels. Rachel had clearly been sleeping on the couch. There was a pillow and blanket tangled at one end. "I should have called," Rachel said, not looking at me. "I just needed some time to think and—" "You don't have to explain. I'm not leaving him. Not really. I need space. I need to figure out." She trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself. I sat down on Emma's couch and patted the cushion beside me. After a moment, Rachel sat too, keeping a careful distance between us. "Tell me what you're thinking," I said. Rachel was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. Then, "I don't know when it started. The way he makes me feel like I'm always doing something wrong, like I'm always the problem that needs fixing. I used to think that was just what marriage was, compromise and adjustment. But then we moved into your cabin, and I watched the way he treated you, like you were in his way, like your home was his to reorganize. And I realized," her voice broke, "I realized that's how he treats me too." I reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. "After you gave us that notice, he said all these things about you, how you'd always been difficult, how you'd never really liked him, how this was just you trying to drive a wedge between us. And I started to defend you, and then I stopped because I realized I've spent 15 years defending him to other people. When did anyone have to defend me?" "Rachel, I lost myself, Mom. Somewhere between trying to keep the peace and trying to be a good wife and trying not to rock the boat, I just disappeared. And the worst part is I don't know how to come back. I don't even know who I am anymore without him telling me." I pulled my daughter into my arms, and she collapsed against me, crying the way she hadn't cried since she was a little girl with a skinned knee. I held her and stroked her hair and let her fall apart in a way she probably hadn't let herself fall apart in years. "You're going to figure this out," I whispered, "and I'm going to help you. But Rachel, you can't go back to the cabin with him. Not while he's still there. Not until you've figured out what you want. He keeps calling. He's left 23 messages. He says I'm being dramatic. He says I need to stop listening to you and Emma and think for myself." She laughed bitterly. "He actually used those words. Think for yourself. Like that's what he's ever wanted. What do you want to do?" Rachel pulled back and looked at me, her face blotchy and tear-stained. "I want him out of your house. I want him gone. I want my mother back. And I want to remember what it feels like to make a decision without being afraid of someone's reaction." "Then that's what we'll do." Over the next 10 days, Brian moved his things out of the cabin. I made sure I was there every day, present and visible, reclaiming each room as he vacated it. He tried at first to be cordial, to make small talk about the weather and the renovation progress on their house. I responded politely but briefly. I had nothing left to give him. On the final day, he found me in the kitchen making coffee. His car was packed, boxes visible through the windows. "I need to know something," he said. "Did you plan this from the beginning? Get Rachel to leave me?" "I plan to take back my house. What Rachel does with her marriage is her choice. You turned her against me." I reminded her who she was before you spent 15 years convincing her to be someone else. Brian's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about our marriage." "I know enough. I know my daughter stopped laughing, stopped making decisions, stopped taking up space in the world because you needed all the space for yourself. That's not a marriage. That's a hostage situation with paperwork." "She'll come back to me," Brian said. "She always does. Maybe, but not because she has nowhere else to go. Not anymore." He left without another word. I watched his car disappear down the mountain road, carrying away the last boxes of his protein powder and business books and measuring tapes. Then I walked through my house, my home, and felt it exhale. Thomas's chair was by the window. My books were on the shelf. The coffee maker was where I wanted it. The thermostat was set to a temperature I preferred. The cabin was mine again. Rachel came back a week later. Not to stay, she said, just to visit, to see the house the way it was supposed to be. She brought Emma with her, and the three of us drank tea on the deck, watching the aspen leaves turn gold. The renovation is almost done, Rachel said. Another 2 weeks, they think. Brian wants to talk about moving back in together. What do you want? Emma asked. Rachel was quiet, watching a hawk circle overhead. I want to remember how to want things. Is that weird? I want to figure out what I like and what I don't like, and what I'll accept and what I won't, without anyone else's voice in my head telling me I'm being difficult or high maintenance or ungrateful. That's not weird, I said. That's recovery. We sat in silence for a while. Then Rachel turned to me. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible in your own home. You didn't. Brian did. I let him. I watched him do it. And I didn't stop him, because stopping him meant having to admit how he treated me too. It was easier to pretend everything was fine. You don't have to pretend anymore. Rachel reached for my hand. I don't know what's going to happen with my marriage. I might go back to him. I might not. But thank you for showing me I had a choice. 3 months later, Rachel filed for divorce. She told me over lunch at a cafe in Denver, her voice steady and sure in a way I hadn't heard since she was young. He didn't take it well, she said. But that's not my problem anymore. I can't spend the rest of my life managing his feelings. How do you feel? Scared. Relieved. Like I've been holding my breath for 15 years, and I finally remembered how to exhale. She smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. I'm moving into my own place next month, a condo in Capitol Hill near Emma. It's small, but it's mine. Your father would be proud of you. I think he would have kicked Brian out years ago. Probably. I laughed. But then you wouldn't have learned to do it yourself. Rachel comes to visit the cabin once a month now. Sometimes she brings Emma. Sometimes she comes alone. She sits in Thomas's chair by the window and watches the mountains. And sometimes she talks about Brian and the divorce and the therapy she's doing. Other times, we sit in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and listening to the wind in the aspen trees. Last week, she asked if she could store some of her things here while she figured out her new place. Of course, I said. What kind of things? Books, mostly. I'm reclaiming shelf space in my life, literally and metaphorically. We carried boxes of books up from her car, poetry and novels and memoirs, the kinds of books she used to read before Brian decided they were taking up valuable shelf space in their house. We arranged them on the bookshelf in the living room, mixing them with mine, creating something new and shared. Rachel stood back and looked at the shelf, her hands on her hips. It's perfect. It is. Mom? She turned to me. Thank you for not letting me disappear completely. Thank you for fighting for your space, even when it meant fighting with me. You're my daughter. I'll always fight for you, even when that means fighting against you. She hugged me then, tight and long, and I felt her breathe deeply like she was taking in something she'd been starved for. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. I'm going to be okay, she said. I know you are. And I did know, because I'd watched her remember who she was. I'd watched her stand up and speak up and claim space in her own life. I'd watched my daughter come back to herself. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to make yourself smaller. Sometimes you have to serve an eviction notice to the person taking up too much room, even when that person is married to your daughter. Even when it means temporary pain for permanent freedom. I sit in Thomas's chair now, watching the aspen trees shimmer in the afternoon light, and I think about all the ways we teach people how to treat us. I taught Brian he couldn't have my home. Rachel taught him he couldn't have her self-respect. They're both lessons worth teaching. They're both lessons worth learning. The cabin is quiet now, filled with books and memories, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you'll accept. Rachel's learning that lesson, too. One day at a time. She calls me every Sunday morning, and we talk about everything and nothing, the way we used to before Brian's voice became the only one that mattered. Last Sunday, she told me she'd started dating again. Nothing serious, she said, Just coffee with a colleague who made her laugh. He sounds nice, I said. He is. And Mom? When I'm with him, I don't feel like I have to apologize for existing. That's new. That's progress. That's everything. We talked until the coffee went cold, and even after we hung up, I sat in Thomas's chair, smiling. My daughter was finding her way back. My house was mine again. And somewhere in the mountains around us, the aspens were turning gold, the way they do every fall, reminding us that change is beautiful even when it's painful, especially when it's painful. The cabin is mine. The life is mine. The choice is mine. And that's exactly how it should be.